1 million workers, 2,000 years of construction, 13,000 miles of mountain and stone. And in the end, it was opened from the inside. They called it the longest cemetery on Earth, because buried inside it, in the stone and the packed earth, were the bones of the men who built it. Welcome back to EchoMind Documentaries. If this is your first time here, subscribe, like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Let's dive back into the topic. For over 2,000 years, it stretched across mountain ridges and desert plains, cutting through the earth like a scar that refused to heal. It was not built in a decade or a century. It was built in blood, in silence, and in the bones of men who never came home. The Great Wall of China is the longest structure ever built by human hands. At its fullest extent, it spans more than 13,000 miles. But the number tells only part of the story. What the number cannot tell you is the weight of it, the grief of it, the impossible, staggering human cost of it. The story begins long before the wall most people picture. As early as the 7th century BC, during the period known as the Warring States, rival kingdoms across northern China began constructing their own defensive barriers. The states of Qi, Wei, Zhao, Yan, and Qin each built walls to guard their borders from one another and from the nomadic peoples pressing in from the north. These were not unified. They were scattered, local, temporary in ambition, if not in stone. That changed in 221 BC, when the king of Qin conquered the last of his rivals and became the first emperor of a unified China. He called himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, and he moved with a speed and ruthlessness that reshaped the ancient world. One of his earliest and most consequential decisions was to connect and extend those scattered walls into a single, continuous northern frontier. He appointed his most trusted general, Meng Tian, to lead the construction. Meng Tian commanded an army of 300,000 soldiers, many of whom became laborers by necessity. They were joined by hundreds of thousands of conscripted peasants, convicted criminals, and prisoners of war. At the peak of construction during the Qin Dynasty, estimates suggest that nearly 1 million workers labored on the wall simultaneously. The terrain was merciless. Workers hauled stone and packed earth across the Mongolian steppe, through the Gobi Desert, and over the ridgelines of mountains that offered no mercy to the living. There were no machines, there were no cranes or engines, there was only the human body, and the human body has limits. Men died by the thousands. Some estimates reach into the millions across all the dynasties that contributed to the wall's construction. They died from exhaustion, from starvation, from exposure to brutal winters and suffocating summers. They died in accidents, in collapses, in falls from heights that left no survivors. Many were buried directly within the wall itself, and for centuries the Chinese called it the longest cemetery on Earth. Families received no word. Wives waited in villages that never saw their husbands return. A folk tale emerged from that grief, the story of Lady Meng Jian, whose husband was conscripted and killed during the wall's construction. When she traveled to the wall to find him and discovered he had died, she wept so bitterly that an entire section of the wall collapsed to reveal his bones. It is a legend, but legends do not emerge from nothing. They emerge from a grief too large for ordinary language. The Qin wall was built primarily from rammed earth. Laborers packed layers of soil and organic material between wooden frames until the mass hardened into something that could resist both armies and time. In the desert regions of the northwest, workers mixed in reeds and gravel to stabilize the composition. In areas with available stone, they quarried and hauled it. Some sections rose to heights of 15 feet. Others were little more than mounded ridges. The Qin wall was enormous in ambition, but rough in execution. And when the Qin dynasty collapsed just 15 years after the first emperor's death, much of it began its slow return to dust. The Han dynasty that followed extended the wall westward to guard the Silk Road trade routes. The Sui dynasty rebuilt and reinforced sections. But the wall we now recognize, the image that appears on maps and postcards and in the imagination of the world, was not completed until the Ming Dynasty, nearly 15 centuries after the Qin began. The Ming emperors came to power in 1368, driving out the Mongol Yuan dynasty that had ruled China for nearly a century. They were haunted by that vulnerability, by the memory of what it meant for the wall to fail, and so they rebuilt it, not with rammed earth this time, but with fired brick and stone, with mortar mixed from lime and the sticky glutinous water of cooked rice. Ming engineers developed sophisticated designs, with watchtowers spaced at regular intervals, signal beacons capable of relaying warnings hundreds of miles in hours, garrison fortresses, and drainage systems to prevent the foundations from eroding in heavy rain. The watchtowers were the nervous system of the wall. Each tower was positioned so that the next tower was visible from it. When an enemy force was spotted, soldiers lit fires of dry wood and wolf dung, a smoke so thick and black that it could be seen for miles. One fire meant 100 enemies, 2 fires meant 500, 3 fires meant 1,000, 4 fires meant 5,000, 5 simultaneous fires meant more than 10,000 were coming. The signals traveled hundreds of miles to the capital in less than a single day. Ming construction lasted nearly 200 years and employed millions more workers across that span. The section that runs through the mountains north of Beijing, the section tourists climb today, was built and rebuilt during this era. The bricks were manufactured in kilns across northern China and transported to the site. Each brick was stamped with the name of the kiln, the date, and often the name of the official responsible. If a brick proved defective, the kiln could be traced and the responsible party punished. It was quality control enforced by consequence. And yet, for all its scale, for all its engineering, for all its cost in lives and treasure, the wall did not function the way its builders hoped. It slowed movement, it complicated logistics for invading forces, it provided early warning through its beacon system, but it never formed an impenetrable barrier. Nomadic forces found passes and gaps. Officials were bribed to open gates. The Mongols under Genghis Khan did not breach the wall so much as route around it, move through it where it was weak, and overwhelm it at points where the garrison was undermanned. In 1644, when the Manchu forces who would establish the Qing dynasty were poised at the northeastern pass, it was not military genius alone that brought them through. A Ming general named Wu Sangui, facing a domestic rebellion and seeing no other option, opened the gates himself. The wall that had consumed centuries of labor and millions of lives was undone not by conquest from without, but by a decision made from within. The Qing emperors who followed had no need of the wall. Their empire extended north of it. They let it decay. For 2 centuries, the great structure was left to time and weather. Locals quarried its bricks to build homes and roads. Sections collapsed. Vegetation consumed others. By the 19th century, Western travelers who came to see it found long stretches already returning to the landscape. Restoration began in the 20th century, accelerating after China opened to international tourism. Today, the most visited sections near Beijing have been rebuilt to something close to their Ming Dynasty form. They draw tens of millions of visitors each year from every country on Earth. People climb its steps and look out over the ridgelines and try to hold in their minds what it means to stand on something built by the hands of people who died building it. There's a particular quality to old structures built at human cost. The pyramids carry it. The cathedrals carry it. The Great Wall carries it more than most, because unlike the pyramids, which were built in concentrated bursts, the wall was rebuilt and extended and rebuilt again across more than 2,000 years of history. Countless individual lives, each one a complete world of hunger and hope and loss, were consumed in its making. What the wall ultimately tells us is something about the nature of power and the nature of fear. Emperors built it because they were afraid of what lay beyond the northern horizon, afraid of the peoples who rode hard across the steppe and answered to no palace, no bureaucracy, no mandate of heaven. The wall was a line drawn between 2 ways of living, between the settled world and the world that moved. And the people who built it, the conscripts and the criminals and the soldiers who died in the rock and the cold, they were not afraid. Or if they were, their fear was of a different kind. The immediate fear of the man who has no choice, who lifts the stone because the alternative is worse, who keeps moving because stillness means death in the mountain winter. We remember the wall. We do not know their names. That is the nature of monuments. They outlast the people who made them possible. They stand long after the hands that shaped them have returned to the ground. But those hands were real. Those lives were real. And somewhere in the limestone and the brick and the packed earth that still holds in the oldest surviving sections, that reality is still present. The Great Wall of China was never just a wall. It was a statement, a line written in stone across the face of the earth by a civilization trying to define the edge of its own world. It failed to keep out every enemy. It failed to last without constant rebuilding. But it has outlasted every dynasty that built it, and it stands today as the most visible remnant of an ancient ambition so large it could only be measured in centuries and in lives. 2,000 years of construction, millions of lives given and taken, 13,000 miles of mountain and desert and stone. That is the Great Wall of China. And nothing you read in a book and nothing you see in a photograph will prepare you for the weight of standing on it.